What's going on, everybody? This is Steve from Bloom Audio, and today we're going to talk about the RAAL-1995 Immanis. Now, I go pretty far back with RAAL. Shortly after I had started with Bloom, we got a SR1A set up. I may have actually been there before I started, I don't remember exactly. And that was one of the first experiences I had that really completely blew me away with what a hi-fi headphone system could sound like. Now, if you've ever seen or used the SR1A, it had these like ear flap, ear speaker things you adjusted. It looked like you were getting assimilated by the Borg when you wore it. It was a whole experience. That doesn't even take into account the process of setting it up, which required having a speaker amp. You know, if you had a power amp, you needed the preamp. You hook it up with this impedance adapter thing. It was a whole mess. We had a lot of fun, you know, setting those up for customers and coaching customers on how to get that set up right with their amps and not set anything on fire. So Immanis is something totally different. It's the same ribbon headphone technology, but it's like a complete refinement and revolution of that. Can it maintain that wow factor sonically while providing a much more streamlined experience? Well, we're gonna take a closer look, talk about what it is, maybe ask who is this for, and should you buy it? Immanis is a pretty unique headphone in that it uses triple ribbon driver system rather than a conventional sort of headphone driver. These are pretty rare. I'm actually not aware of any other ribbon driver headphones besides what RAAL makes, the SR1A, 1B, and the CA1A were their previous models. And ribbon drivers, similar to electrostatic, are frequently used in loudspeaker setups, typically in the tweeter position, where it's not effective as a full range speaker for a loudspeaker setup, but in a smaller application like a headphone, it can cover the full range of the frequency spectrum. Now, ribbon drivers don't exactly match up with any existing technology in terms of how they're driven well. The impedance is something like, 0.029 ohm, but again, they were previously using speaker level power to drive these. So RAAL uses this ribbon current drive interface to basically take what's coming out of your headphone amp, designed for more traditional headphones, and converts it into current, which is more usable by this ultra low impedance ribbon drive system. They've obviously vastly improved on the efficiency of this system, as again, previous generations, you needed to hook it up to speaker taps. This one will go right into your higher powered headphone. Speaking of upgrades from previous versions, the build, design, the craftsmanship, the materials on Immanis are all top notch. Now, if you ever handled an SR1A, you could tell this was a very well built, well made piece of audio equipment. It didn't really look great, wasn't the most comfortable. It was kind of weird. It was cool, but weird. Immanis looks great, feels great. The material quality, build, the whole deal is just audio excellence all around. They're very comfortable, but a little loose on the head. There's not a ton of clamp force. There's pretty good adjustment there, so you can get a pretty solid fit, but I wouldn't recommend, banging your head too much while you're listening. Might get loose, but I have to say you might find yourself getting that head bob involuntarily because these things sound incredible. And, that's gonna beg the question of, what kind of music is this headphone best suited for, and who was this headphone made for? Now, in terms of the sound, what RAAL has achieved here is kind of like the best of all worlds. I mentioned previously how ribbon drivers are often used as tweeters, similar to the way some speakers use electrostatic drivers. And there are definitely some similarities between the ribbon sound and the electrostatic sound. particularly in terms of that speed and resolution. But the ribbon drivers also have a timbre and some of the macro dynamic characteristics that are more similar to a dynamic driver. And while previous generations of RAAL's ribbon driver headphones didn't quite have that bass extension and low end, Immanis achieves that, giving you something like a planar sort of sub-bass extension and slam. So yes, you're getting electrostatic resolution with dynamic timbre and planar bass extension, which is a really incredible combo here. The soundstage and imaging are also a big highlight. This was probably the biggest highlight of listening to the original SR1A for me, was that sense of width and space and that really lifelike imaging that combines the ability to separate out individual instruments and singers in the sound field while also feeling like those sounds were blended well together and connected. That sense of everything happening in a space and that sense of you being in that space with everything around you. One of the things that Immanis accomplishes is that sort of turn your head sort of imaging. That it doesn't just feel like it's in the side or in front of you. The soundstage can almost feel like it extends behind you with really a full 360-degree experience, which just makes for incredible listening. There's not really a specific genre I can say, oh, this did so well or didn't do that well. If there's one weakness in the headphones, I would say certain vocalists, more female than male, felt a little bit more distant than I would have liked, whereas others, a lot of male vocalists, that baritone range in particular, feel very up close. And even female more in the alto contralto range are going to give you that sense of up close, intimate presence in the vocal delivery, while others will feel more distant. Other than that, I would say Immanis works with just about any genre or song you can throw at it. Very well balanced, very clean and clear. Orchestral and soundtrack type pieces are gonna give you a sense of vastness, along with positioning, separation in the instruments. With rock and pop music, you get good dynamics, natural sense of the timbre of the instruments, and again, very lifelike in the studio or in the concert hall sort of presentation, depending on how that track was mastered exactly. So this is really good across the board. I threw some EQ at it as well. I found I really liked it with genres like EDM and hip hop in particular, with a pretty aggressive bass shelf on the bottom. It sounded good without it, but it can handle that big bass boost without distorting or clipping at all. Now that all sounds great, but Immanis does require quite a bit of muscle to get the best sound out of it. We ran it through a pretty big range of amps. My favorite was the RS Hedonia 300B. That was really just all around great. Probably the lowest cost one that I really loved it with was the Burson Soloist Voyager. Still talking about like a $4,000 amp there. You know, the Cayenne Soul was also great with these. But again, all of these are amps with a pretty solid amount of power. It really needs that extra juice with that impedance adapter. Even though you don't need actual speaker power anymore, still going to need a pretty powerful headphone amp to get the most out of these. And that of course leaves us with our final question here, which is, should you buy it? Now the first part of that discussion of should you buy it is gonna come down to exactly what's in your bank account right now. If you have $10,000 or more in your discretionary spending fund, then maybe you could take a look at Immanis. As I was saying, you know, these sound incredible and they're really an incredible evolution of that ribbon driver technology. So if you've been curious about ribbon drivers, if you like something like the SR1A, but were a little bit cautious due to some of the setup concerns or even just, you know, not wanting the crazy ear flaps, definitely take a second look at what RAAL has to offer with Immanis. If you're just looking for a top-of-the-line headphone and not sure which direction to go, maybe you're looking at something like the Susvara from Hi-Fi Man's, a Susvara Unveiled. Immanis sits in a really interesting place, especially compared to those two headphones, because in a lot of ways, I think it combines the best parts of both of those and expands on them, like literally in terms of the space. I did some sort of ABC listening. I felt like Immanis captured a lot of that weight from the original Susvara that has in the sound that Unveiled doesn't quite capture. Well, it also provides, that sense of resolution and speed that Susvara Unveiled brought that the original didn't have, and maybe even goes beyond that a little bit to that more electrostatic-like sense of speed there. And then on top of that, the soundstage, the overall sense of space was just a step above what either of them were providing there. Even compared to these top-of-the-line headphones, you could put things like the Audiophile LCD5 or the Focal Utopia in this conversation as well. Immanis has the sense of kind of being like an ultra flagship almost. Does all these things so well that it's hard for a single headphone to really fully compete with that. And the fact that if you have Susvara and you have an amp capable of powering Susvara, this isn't like an electrostatic system where you're gonna need to rebuild the whole thing from the bottom. It can plug right into that high-end headphone amp with the current adapter and you're good to go. So in short, Immanis is an incredible headphone, incredible build, incredible sound, and it's a leap forward in terms of the sound, the design, the whole package over RAAL's previous headphones. And honestly, this is quite possibly the best headphone I've ever heard. I think it represents a new benchmark in sound that other brands are going to have to look to and try to push their performance to catch up with what RAAL accomplished here. Thanks for watching. You can check out Immanis and a lot of other great products at bloomaudio.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon with more high-fidelity audio content.